I knew my husband was ashamed of my body, but I never thought he would erase me from my own son's life. On Liam's first birthday, I sat upstairs in the only dress that still fit me while the party I had planned happened below. I heard music, laughter, camera clicks, and strangers praising the decorations I had made with my own tired hands. Then I heard the photographer say, "Mom and Dad, stand closer together." I waited for Daniel to correct him. He didn't. I waited for Vanessa, my best friend, to laugh and say she was only helping. She didn't. When I walked to the top of the stairs, I saw her standing beside my husband in a white dress, holding my baby like he belonged to her. My mother-in-law was fixing Vanessa's hair, smiling like she had finally gotten the daughter-in-law she wanted. Then they brought out the cake. It said, "Happy birthday, Liam. Love, Daddy and Mommy Vanessa." That was the moment I realized they weren't just hiding me from the family photos. They were replacing me as his mother. 3 weeks before Liam's birthday, I still believed I could save my family if I just tried harder. That was the saddest part. Even after all the cold looks, all the comments about my weight, all the nights Daniel slept peacefully while I sat in the nursery with a crying baby against my chest, some small part of me still believed that if I made Liam's first birthday beautiful enough, maybe Daniel would remember we were supposed to be a family. So I planned everything myself. I ordered blue and white balloons, picked a soft cloud theme, chose tiny silver candles, wrapped the party favors, and spent 2 nights arranging Liam's baby photos in little frames across the living room table. Daniel barely looked up when I asked what he thought. He just said, "Do whatever you want. Just don't make it tacky." His mother was worse. She came by one afternoon, watched me tape ribbons to the wall while Liam slept in his playpen and said, "You should sit down before you hurt yourself. You're not exactly light on your feet anymore." I pretended not to hear her, but my face burned for the rest of the day. After Liam was born, my body had changed so fast it felt like I was living inside someone else. I was swollen from medication, exhausted from breastfeeding, and heavier than I had ever been in my life. Some mornings, even bending down to pick up Liam's toys made my back ache. I hated mirrors. I hated family photos. I hated the way Daniel looked at old pictures of me like he was mourning a woman who had died. But I loved my son more than I hated myself, so I kept going. I told myself this party was for Liam, not for me. I wanted him to have photos filled with balloons, cake, laughter, and people who loved him. I wanted one day where no one whispered about my size, my clothes, or how tired I looked. The morning of the party, I woke up before everyone else and stood in the living room for a long time, looking at what I had made. The room was beautiful. The cake table was ready. Liam's little outfit was hanging over the back of the chair. For the first time in months, I felt a small flicker of pride. Then I went upstairs, tried to zip the navy dress I had bought for myself, and the zipper stopped halfway. I stared at my reflection, holding the fabric together with one hand, fighting back tears. I whispered, "Just get through today." I didn't know that by sunset, I would no longer be welcome in the house I had decorated with my own hands. By noon, the house was full of people, and I was still upstairs trying to make the navy dress work. I finally gave up on the zipper, covered the back with a cardigan, and told myself no one would notice if I kept my shoulders straight. Liam was sitting on the bed in his little birthday outfit, kicking his legs and laughing at the tissue paper from one of his gifts. I picked him up, kissed his warm cheek, and whispered, "Today is for you, baby." For a moment, holding him made me brave. Then Daniel walked in. He was wearing the gray suit I had chosen, his hair perfectly styled, his phone already in his hand like he had somewhere more important to be. He looked at Liam and smiled. Then he looked at me and the smile disappeared. "The photographer is setting up," he said. "Good," I replied, trying to sound normal. "I'll bring Liam down." But Daniel stepped closer and took Liam from my arms before I could move. It was not gentle. It was not violent enough for anyone to call it violence, but it was firm enough to remind me that in that house, my body was always treated like an obstacle. "Mom wants him downstairs now," he said. I reached for Liam's shoes from the bed. "He's not wearing his shoes yet." Daniel glanced at them. "Vanessa can do it." The words hit me harder than they should have. Why would Vanessa put shoes on my son? Daniel exhaled sharply, already irritated. "Because she's helping. Like she always does." I tried to follow him to the door, but he stopped and turned around. "Emily, I need you to stay up here for a little while." I thought he meant until Liam was dressed, or until the guests settled. Then he said, "Just until the pictures are done." My hand froze on the doorknob. "What pictures?" He looked down the hall, making sure no one was close enough to hear, then lowered his voice. "The family pictures." I stared at him. "I am family." His mouth tightened, but there was no guilt in his face. Only inconvenience. "Don't start this today." My throat burned. "You don't want me in my own son's birthday photos?" Daniel's eyes moved over me again, slow and cruel, from the cardigan hiding my half-zipped dress to my swollen face. "I don't want people whispering every time they look at the album," he said. "I don't want Liam growing up embarrassed by those pictures." Downstairs, someone laughed, and then I heard my mother-in-law call out, "Vanessa, sweetheart, bring him over here. You look so natural with him." Daniel opened the door, carrying my son away from me, and said quietly, "Stay here. For once, do what's best for him." Then he walked downstairs while I stood in the hallway, listening to another woman being welcomed into the space where I was supposed to belong. For a few minutes, I stayed where Daniel told me to stay. I stood in the hallway outside our bedroom, one hand still on the wall, listening to my son's birthday party continue without me. I kept telling myself there had to be a reason. Maybe Daniel only wanted a few pictures with Liam before I came down. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe I was overreacting because I was tired and hurt and already ashamed before anyone said a word. But then I heard the photographer downstairs say, "Let's get a beautiful shot of Mom and Dad with the birthday boy." My whole body went still. I waited for Daniel to correct him. I waited for my mother-in-law to say my name. I waited for Vanessa to laugh and say, "Oh no, I'm just helping." Instead, I heard my mother-in-law's voice, bright and proud. "Vanessa, stand closer to Daniel." "Yes, sweetheart," just like that. I moved toward the staircase before I even realized what I was doing. Every step felt heavy. My knees hurt, my chest tightened, and I had to hold the railing because part of me already knew what I was about to see. From the top of the stairs, I could see the living room glowing with the decorations I had spent weeks preparing. The blue balloons floated above the fireplace. Liam's baby photos were lined neatly across the table. The party favors I had wrapped were stacked beside the cake stand. Everything looked perfect. Everything looked like mine, except I was not in it. Daniel stood near the fireplace in his gray suit, smiling like a proud father. Vanessa stood beside him in a white dress, holding Liam against her chest with both arms. She was not standing like a guest. She was standing like she belonged there. My mother-in-law reached over and fixed a strand of Vanessa's hair, then adjusted Liam's collar as if they were posing for a family portrait. The photographer lifted his camera and said, "Beautiful. Mom and Dad, look right here." Daniel smiled. Vanessa smiled. No one corrected him. Not one person. My son reached for Vanessa's necklace, innocent and happy, while the woman I once called my best friend held him closer and tilted her face toward my husband. I gripped the railing so hard my fingers ached. I wanted to call out. I wanted to ask everyone if they had forgotten I existed. But before I could force a single word out of my mouth, someone rolled the cake table into the center of the room, and that was when the day became something I could never forgive. The cake was exactly the one I had chosen. Soft blue frosting, white clouds around the sides, tiny gold stars, and Liam's name written across the top in the same font I had picked from the bakery catalog. For 1 second, through all the pain and confusion, I felt a small piece of pride because at least that part of the party still belonged to me. Then the table turned slightly, and I saw the words written underneath my son's name. "Happy birthday, Liam. Love, Daddy and Mommy Vanessa." I read it once, then again. My mind refused to understand it at first, as if my own body was trying to protect me from the truth. Mommy Vanessa. Not Aunt Vanessa. Not with love from everyone. Mommy Vanessa. My best friend looked up and saw me standing on the stairs. Her smile faded for half a second. Then she lifted Liam higher against her chest like she was showing me that he was already hers. Something inside me snapped. I walked down the stairs, faster than my body wanted to move, and the room slowly went quiet as people noticed me. Daniel turned first, and the anger on his face was instant. Not guilt, not panic, just anger that I had disobeyed him. My mother-in-law stepped toward me with a fake gentle voice and said, "Emily, sweetheart, not now." I ignored her and reached for my son. Give me Liam, I said. Vanessa took a step back. Emily, you're upset, she whispered, making her voice soft enough for everyone to hear. I reached again and Daniel grabbed my wrist so hard pain shot up my arm. I gasped, but he leaned close and hissed, "Do not embarrass me in front of these people." I looked from his hand on my wrist to the cake behind him. "You put another woman's name as my son's mother," I said, my voice breaking. That was when my mother-in-law raised her phone. She was recording me. Not Daniel's fingers digging into my skin. Not Vanessa holding my crying baby away from me. Not the cake that proved they had planned this. Only me shaking, crying, reaching for my son. Liam started screaming, and Vanessa hugged him tighter like she was protecting him from me. "She's scaring him," Vanessa said, tears appearing in her eyes right on cue. Guests began whispering. Someone said my name like a warning. Daniel released my wrist only when he knew the camera had captured enough, then stepped back and said loudly, "Emily, you need help." And for the first time, I understood that this was not just humiliation. It was evidence. The party ended quietly after that, but not because anyone understood what had happened to me. It ended because Daniel and his mother knew they had gotten what they wanted. Guests left with tight smiles and whispered excuses, avoiding my eyes as if my pain were something contagious. Vanessa disappeared into the nursery with Liam, and every time I tried to follow, my mother-in-law stepped in front of me and said, "Give him space. You've upset him enough." I wanted to scream that he was my baby, that I was the one who had rocked him through fevers, fed him at 3 in the morning, learned every cry and every breath, but my throat felt raw and useless. By the time the last car pulled away, the house looked like a crime scene decorated for a child's birthday. Blue balloons floated against the ceiling. Half-eaten cakes sat on the table. The words "Mommy Vanessa" were still there, smeared slightly at the edge where someone had cut a slice. Daniel walked into the living room holding a folder. His face was calm now, almost satisfied. He placed the folder on the coffee table and told me to sit down. I didn't. My wrist was throbbing, and a purple bruise was already rising under my skin. "I want my son," I said. Daniel opened the folder instead. Inside were divorce papers, an emergency custody request, and a statement claiming I was emotionally unstable, physically unfit, and a danger to Liam. I stared at the words, unable to breathe. "You planned this," I whispered. His mother folded her arms beside him. "We are protecting that child from a woman who refuses to accept reality." Then Daniel said I needed to leave the house for the night so everyone could cool down. I laughed once because the sentence was so cruel it almost sounded fake. "You want me to leave my own home without my baby?" Vanessa appeared in the hallway with Liam asleep against her shoulder, wearing the soft, innocent expression she used whenever other people were watching. "Maybe it's better," she said. "Just for tonight." I stepped toward her, but Daniel moved between us. "If you come near him right now, I'll call the police and show them the video," he said. That stopped me. Not because I believed I had done something wrong, but because I suddenly understood how trapped I was. They had the edited version. They had the witnesses. They had the story. I had a bruised wrist, a broken heart, and no one in that room willing to tell the truth. An hour later, I walked out of the house with one bag of clothes, no wedding ring, and no Liam in my arms. As the door closed behind me, I heard my son cry from upstairs, and Daniel did not let me go back in. The first night away from Liam, I sat on the edge of a motel bed and replayed everything until the room felt smaller than my own breathing. I kept asking myself how they had managed to make everyone believe I was dangerous when all I had done was try to get my baby back. But the truth was, it had not started at the birthday party. It had started months earlier after Liam was born, when my body changed faster than my mind could accept. The pregnancy had been hard, the delivery had been harder, and the recovery felt like something no one had warned me about. I was swollen from medication, exhausted from feeding schedules, and so sleep-deprived that sometimes I forgot whether I had eaten breakfast or only made it for someone else. The weight came on quickly, but the shame came even faster. Daniel noticed every pound like it was a personal insult. At first, he made small comments, the kind that sounded almost harmless if you wanted badly enough to forgive them. "Are you sure you need seconds? Maybe you should start walking again. You used to care how you looked." Then the comments grew sharper. He stopped touching me. He stopped sitting beside me on the couch. He deleted photos where I stood too close to him, and said he was only trying to help me avoid embarrassment. His mother was worse because she wrapped cruelty in concern. She would look at my plate and say, "I'm worried about you," then whisper to Daniel that no woman should let herself go that badly after having one child. If I cried, they called me unstable. If I defended myself, they called me aggressive. If I was too tired to argue, they called me lazy. Every normal symptom of recovery became proof that I was failing. When I nodded off in the nursery chair after being awake with Liam all night, Daniel took a picture. When I leaned against the stairs because my back hurt, his mother watched me like she was collecting evidence. When I ate toast at midnight because I had not had dinner, Vanessa appeared in the doorway and said softly, "Maybe food is becoming a coping mechanism for you." I was too tired then to recognize the pattern. I thought they were disappointed in me because I had changed. I did not understand that they were teaching me to be ashamed of myself so that when they finally took Liam, I would believe I deserved it. Sitting alone in that motel room, with my wrist bruised and my baby gone, I finally understood the cruelest part. They had not used my body because it made me weak. They used it because they knew the world would believe them before it believed a fat mother begging for her child. Vanessa did not replace me all at once. That was what made it so easy for everyone to pretend nothing was wrong. First, she was just helping. She brought groceries when I was too tired to shop. She folded Liam's onesies while I sat on the couch with ice packs on my back. She made soup, washed bottles, and told me I was still beautiful on days when Daniel could barely look at me. I was grateful because I was drowning, and she seemed like the only person willing to reach into the water. But little by little, her help started to feel like ownership. She learned Liam's schedule and corrected me in front of Daniel when I mixed up nap times. She bought him clothes without asking and smiled when my mother-in-law said Vanessa had better taste. She posted photos of him online with captions like, "My favorite little man," and when I asked her to take them down, Daniel said I was being jealous of my own best friend. The worst part was how natural she made it look. When guests came over, she was always the one already holding Liam. When he cried, she rushed in before I could stand up. When I reached for him, she would say, "Rest, Em. I've got him," in that gentle voice that made me sound unreasonable if I insisted. Daniel started praising her for things I did every day without thanks. If Vanessa changed one diaper, he called her amazing. If I stayed awake all night with a teething baby, he complained that I looked terrible the next morning. His mother began comparing us openly. "Vanessa has such calm energy," she would say, while watching me struggle to lift Liam from the playmat. "Children can feel that." I told myself they were only being cruel because they were disappointed in me. I told myself Vanessa was not doing it on purpose. Then one afternoon, I walked into the nursery and found her sitting in the rocking chair with Liam asleep on her chest. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching them with a softness I had not seen on his face in months. Vanessa looked up at him and whispered, "He feels safe with me." Daniel smiled and said, "I know. Neither of them noticed me standing there. Or maybe they did, and that was worse." That was the moment I first felt it clearly, the quiet horror of being alive inside a family that was already practicing how to live without me. 3 days after the birthday party, Daniel allowed me to return to the house for 20 minutes to collect personal items, as if the home I had cleaned, decorated, and cried inside no longer belonged to me. He stood by the front door with his arms crossed while his mother watched from the kitchen, pretending to make tea, and Vanessa stayed upstairs with Liam so I would not be able to see him. I wanted to run past all of them, grab my son, and never look back, but I had already spoken to a legal aid attorney that morning, and she had warned me not to give them another moment they could twist into proof against me. So I kept my head down, walked to the bedroom, and packed like a stranger in my own life. Clothes, medication, my old laptop, Liam's birth certificate if I could find it. That was why I went into the nursery. The room smelled like baby lotion and clean blankets, and for a second my knees almost gave out because everything in there still looked like I belonged to him. His crib, his stuffed elephant, the little blue blanket I had held against my chest the night we brought him home. I opened the top drawer looking for his documents, but underneath a stack of folded onesies, I found a manila folder with my name written across the tab. Not Emily, not Mom, just my full legal name like I was already a case file. Inside were printed photos of me asleep in the nursery chair with my mouth slightly open, me standing at the fridge at midnight, me crying at the kitchen table, me leaning against the staircase with one hand on my back. Under each photo, someone had typed notes: emotionally unstable, poor impulse control, physically limited, unable to respond quickly to child's needs. My hand started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the folder. Then I found the worst page. It was a timeline titled Custody Preparation. Weeks before Liam's birthday, Daniel had written down every step: gather witness statements, document Emily's behavior, increase Vanessa's role in daily care, create public incident if necessary. Public incident. That was what they called the worst night of my life. Not cruelty, not betrayal. An incident. At the bottom of the page, there was a note in Daniel's handwriting: birthday party will confirm concerns in front of family. I stopped breathing. The cake, the photos, Vanessa holding Liam, his mother recording me. None of it had happened because I lost control. It happened because they needed me to. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of every page as fast as I could, my heart pounding every time the floor creaked outside the nursery. When Daniel called from downstairs that my time was up, I slid the folder back exactly where I found it. Then I walked out with Liam's birth certificate hidden inside my laptop case, and the first real proof that I had not imagined any of it. Back at the motel, I spread the photos from Daniel's custody folder across my laptop screen and stared at them until the words blurred. Custody preparation. Public incident if necessary. Increase Vanessa's role in daily care. Every sentence felt like proof that I had been living inside a trap while calling it a marriage. I wanted to call Daniel and scream, but before I could even touch my phone, a bank notification appeared. My card had been declined. Then another message came in from Daniel. I froze the joint account until the court decides what's safe for Liam. Safe for Liam. That was how he turned every cruelty into concern. I had $43 in cash, one bag of clothes, and a motel room I could barely afford for 2 more nights. Then he sent me a video call request. I answered so fast my hands shook. Liam was on the screen, sitting in Vanessa's lap. She waved his little hand at the camera and said, "Say hi to mommy." For 1 second I thought she meant me. Then she kissed the top of his head and smiled at Daniel. My chest felt like it had been split open. "Let me talk to him," I whispered. Daniel's voice came from behind the phone. "Only if you stay calm." I tried. I really tried. But when Liam reached toward the screen and whimpered, I broke. Tears ran down my face before I could stop them. Daniel ended the call immediately. A minute later he texted, "This is exactly why I'm worried. You upset him every time." I sat there shaking, knowing he had probably recorded the call too. Then I opened social media and saw Vanessa's new post. It was a photo from the birthday party, cropped so I was nowhere in it. She was holding Liam beside Daniel, both of them smiling under the blue balloons I had hung myself. Her caption said, "Not all mothers give birth. Some hearts are chosen." Hundreds of people had liked it. Some commented that she looked beautiful with her little family. That was when I stopped crying. I opened the shared party folder Daniel had forgotten to remove me from and searched until I found the bakery confirmation. The customer name was Vanessa Cole. The decorator's note said, "Please make the words Mommy Vanessa large enough to show clearly in photos." I took a screenshot. Then I found her saved caption drafts, all written before the party, all preparing the world to see her as Liam's mother. My hands were still shaking, but something inside me had gone cold and steady. They had my humiliation. They had their edited video. They had their witnesses. But now I had their plan. I created a folder on my laptop and named it Evidence. Then I opened a blank document, stared at the cursor, and typed the only 3 words that mattered anymore. Get Liam back. The next morning, I did not wake up powerful. I woke up with $43, a frozen bank account, and a motel bill due by 11. For a few minutes, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at Liam's birth certificate like it was the only proof I had ever been his mother. Then I took off my wedding ring and sold it at a pawn shop for far less than it was worth, because love had already cost me enough and I needed money for a lawyer, food, and 1 more week in a room where Daniel could not lock me out. I called the legal aid attorney and sent her everything. The custody folder, the bakery receipt, Vanessa's caption drafts, the bank message, and screenshots of Daniel cutting off my video calls with Liam. Then I called a doctor. Not because Daniel had convinced me my body made me unworthy, but because I needed my body to survive the war he had started. The doctor told me my swelling, exhaustion, pain, and weight gain were not proof that I was lazy or broken. They were symptoms of a woman who had gone through childbirth, stress, medication, and months of neglect. I cried in her office because it was the first time someone had looked at me without disgust. After that, I started small. 10-minute walks before sunrise, cheap meals from a microwave, therapy through a women's support program, screenshots of every cruel message Daniel sent, notes from every doctor visit. At night, I searched for work, but no one wanted to hire a woman with no stable address and a custody fight hanging over her life. So I started selling the clothes I had bought after giving birth but never wore because Daniel made me feel ugly in them. One woman bought a soft green dress and messaged me, "Thank you. I needed something that made me feel like a person again." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I wrote a post without using my real name. I wrote about a mother who had been erased from her own child's birthday because her body changed after birth. I wrote about the word mom being handed to another woman in frosting. I ended it with 3 words: "Love, Mom." I expected maybe 10 people to read it. By morning, hundreds of women had commented. Some had been mocked by husbands. Some had been shamed by mothers-in-law. Some had hidden from cameras for years. A small postpartum support page shared it. Then a larger women's group reposted it. Orders came in slowly at first, then faster than I could pack them. I found a clearance supplier, bought 10 more dresses, then 20, then enough fabric to test my own designs. Soft waistlines, nursing-friendly cuts, beautiful clothes that did not punish women for having bodies that changed. Love Mom was not a company yet. It was a folding table in a motel room, a cheap website, and a woman taping shipping labels while crying between court documents. But every package I mailed felt like a piece of myself returning. Daniel had frozen my account to make me helpless. He had no idea he had just forced me to build something he would never be able to touch. By the time the custody hearing arrived, Daniel thought he had already won. He walked into court in a dark suit with Vanessa behind him, dressed softly, modestly, like the kind of woman people wanted to trust with a child. His mother carried tissues in her hand before anyone had even spoken, already prepared to perform heartbreak. I sat across from them with my lawyer, my medical records, my bank statements from Love, Mom, and a folder full of evidence, but my hands were still cold under the table. Daniel's attorney went first, and for almost an hour, he made me look exactly the way Daniel wanted the judge to see me. He showed photos of me asleep in the nursery chair, crying at the kitchen table, leaning against the stairs with one hand on my back. He played the video from Liam's birthday party, the edited version where I was shaking, crying, and reaching for my son while everyone stared. Then he said Daniel was not trying to punish me. He was only trying to protect Liam from a mother who was physically overwhelmed and emotionally unstable. Vanessa was called next. She lowered her eyes, folded her hands, and said she loved Liam like family. She said she had stepped in only because I was struggling. She said she never wanted to replace me, but someone had to think about what was best for the baby. I watched the judge listening, and for one terrifying moment, I understood how easily they could have destroyed me if I had come there with nothing but my word. Then my lawyer stood up and asked Vanessa one question. "If you never intended to replace Emily, why did you order a cake that called you Liam's mother?" The room changed. Vanessa blinked. Daniel's jaw tightened. My lawyer placed the bakery receipt on the screen, the one with Vanessa Cole listed as the customer and the note asking for Mommy Vanessa to be large enough to show clearly in photos. Then came the social media drafts, written before the party, calling Liam her chosen son. Then came the custody preparation folder Daniel had hidden under Liam's onesies, the timeline that said, "Increase Vanessa's role in daily care," and "Create public incident if necessary." Daniel's attorney tried to object, but my lawyer was ready. She played the full birthday video from the living room camera Daniel had forgotten was still connected to my old cloud account. This time the judge saw everything. Daniel taking Liam from my arms before the photos. Vanessa stepping back when I reached for him. Daniel gripping my wrist hard enough to make me gasp. My mother-in-law raising her phone only after they had cornered me. The woman in that video was not unstable. She was a mother being trapped. Finally, my lawyer showed the messages Daniel sent after freezing the joint account and cutting off my calls with Liam whenever I cried. One message from Vanessa appeared last. Emily will react. We just need witnesses. For the first time that day, Daniel looked afraid. Not sorry. Afraid. And when the judge looked from the screen to him, I knew the story he had built around my body, my pain, and my motherhood had finally collapsed in front of someone who mattered. The judge did not give Daniel the emergency custody order he wanted. Instead, she ordered Liam returned to me under a temporary arrangement while Daniel's conduct was reviewed. And for the first time since the birthday party, I walked out of that building with my son's small hand wrapped around my finger. Vanessa was barred from unsupervised contact with him. Daniel's mother was removed from any childcare role. Daniel was given limited visitation under conditions he hated, because men like Daniel do not fear losing love as much as they fear losing control. In the months that followed, the life he had performed so carefully began to fall apart. The edited video no longer protected him. The truth about Vanessa spread through his family first, then through his business circle, then through the investors who had once trusted his clean suits and confident voice. Vanessa left when the money started disappearing. She had wanted the image of a ready-made family, not court orders, legal bills, and a man whose reputation was bleeding out in public. Daniel tried to act like she had betrayed him, but I knew better. She had only done to him what they had planned to do to me, walk away when he was no longer useful. I kept building Love Mom slowly, stubbornly, one order at a time. A women's support group shared my anonymous post. Then a postpartum clinic asked to stock a few pieces. Then a local news segment featured the brand without using my real name, calling it a clothing line created for women who wanted to feel human again after birth. I moved from a motel room to a small apartment, from a folding table to a storage unit, from packing orders alone to hiring 2 mothers who needed flexible work as badly as I once did. I became healthier too, but not because I was trying to become the woman Daniel used to approve of. I became healthier because my body was finally mine again. 3 years later, Love Mom had an office, a warehouse, and customers across the country. That was when my assistant told me a struggling company had requested a meeting with me through an investment broker. The founder needed capital fast. He did not know my full name. He only knew he was meeting the owner of Love Mom. When Daniel walked into my office and saw me sitting behind the desk, he stopped like the floor had disappeared beneath him. He wore an expensive suit, but it looked borrowed from a life he no longer had. His company was failing, his credit was ruined, and no one else would touch him. I let him sit. I let him open his folder. I let him tell me how much he respected women-led brands, how he believed in second chances, how a partnership with Love Mom could save both our companies. Then I closed the folder and looked at him. Daniel, I said, you didn't want me in the family photo. You don't get to put me in your rescue plan. His face turned red, but for once he had no script ready. I did not yell. I did not need to. Walking him to the door was quieter than revenge, and somehow much better. That weekend, I threw Liam a birthday party in the backyard of the home I owned. The cake was simple, blue and white, with 5 words written across the top. Happy birthday, Liam, Love Mom. This time I stood in the center of every photo, holding my son with both arms, and no one in that room had the power to erase me again.